date and identify ancient sites, kind of like how we could identify the decade a cell phone belongs to by how it's designed. Archaeologists can link pottery to certain cultures and centuries based on the pottery's style, material, and decorations. And when it comes to the Philistines, archaeologists have discovered Aegean-style pottery at Philistine cities. Check out this photograph. We're looking at an example of Mycenaean 3C pottery, discovered on the Aegean island of Kalymnos. Archaeologists have discovered similar examples in other Aegean sites on Cyprus and mainland Greece. Now, check this out. See any similarities? Light color, dark brown paint? Well, the first picture is an example of Mycenaean 3C pottery from a Greek island. The second example is Mycenaean 3C1 pottery, or more simply nicknamed Philistine monochrome. Yes, this vessel was discovered in the Philistine city of Ekron. So notice the crazy close similarities to Aegean-style pottery. And in fact, archaeologists have discovered Mycenaean 3C1 pottery all over Philistine cities dating to the early Iron Age period. And it was pretty common. At the city of Ekron, for example, Mycenaean 3C1 pottery accounts for somewhere between 40 to 50% of all pottery discovered that dates to the early 12th century. So, what does this tell us about the Philistines and their culture? Archaeologists in the 1970s theorized that the Philistines must have taken this pottery with them from their homelands in the Aegean, or Cyprus itself, when they migrated to their new land. But after studying the pottery using a chemical technique called neutron activation analysis, researchers discovered that these pots were not imports. They were locally produced, created from the same clay found in Philistia itself. In fact, clay with the same chemical fingerprint that we see in later Philistine styles, like Philistine bichrome pottery. So this leads scholars to conclude that the Philistines were making this pottery for themselves, using Aegean-style manufacturing technologies never before seen in the Levant, but not as mere imitators of the style, but as people who migrated to Philistia, carrying with them the technical know-how to continue these styles from a parent culture somewhere in the Aegean world. Here's another example. You're looking at a figurine called an Ashdod figurine. Basically, she's a female figurine that some archaeologists identify as some sort of Philistine goddess, though in this case, half goddess, half offering table. Archaeologists have discovered similar figurines at major Philistine sites, including Ashkelon, Ashdod, and Ekron, dating to as early as the second half of the 12th century. Now, check out these figurines. Archaeologists call these psi figurines. Because of their elongated necks and raised arms, they look kind of like the Greek letter psi. The examples on the left were found in Greece, Crete, and Cyprus. The example on the right from the Philistine city of Ashdod. Again, we might be looking at evidence of a people that carried with them religious and technical knowledge from the Aegean world to the southern coast of Canaan. What about the Philistine diet? Well, according to archaeological data, Philistines apparently ate pig and dog meat, which reflect the dietary practices of Aegean cultures, but not those living in Canaan. Let's start with the pigs. In the Iron Age 1 period, we see higher frequency of pig bones at Philistine sites compared to neighboring sites. At Ashdod, almost 15% of all bones discovered by archaeologists were pig bones. Iron Age Gath? Well, between 13 and 16%. Outside of Philistia, pig bones are much more rare. This may point to higher rates of pork consumption among the Philistines. The theory goes that the Philistines brought pig culture with them from their homelands around the Aegean to the Levantine coast. Analyses of the pig bones found at these sites show that they are genetically related to European pigs. And in fact, wild boars today in Israel and the Palestinian territories are more genetically similar to European boars than those found in surrounding cultures. The Philistines also apparently ate dog meat. While dog bones are a fairly rare find in late Bronze Age Canaanite sites, at the dawn of the early Iron Age, we suddenly see a big spike in dog bones at Philistine sites. And these bones seem to point to evidence of food preparation and consumption. So, for example, archaeologists have noticed cut marks on dog bones that indicate that the Philistines were butchering dogs, and discoloration on the bones implies that they were roasting the meat. Again, this might point to their Aegean origins. Eating dogs was a known practice in mainland Greece, Crete, and the Aegean world in general. Archaeologists have found butchered dog bones all over the Aegean region, dating from the Neolithic period all the way into the Classical period. And finally, Philistine DNA may also point to European origins. A team of archaeologists extracted and analyzed DNA from 10 individuals buried in the Philistine city of Ashkelon. These skeletons date to the Late Bronze Age and the Early Iron Age, the same time period when the so-called Sea Peoples were thought to have showed up in this region. The researchers published their result in 2019, which showed that the DNA from these individuals exhibits specific European patterns, similar DNA patterns that we see in Southern Europeans, in Italy, the Aegean, and southern Spain. This might suggest that the early Philistines were indeed immigrants from Southern Europe, and specifically the cultures around the Aegean Sea. Though we should proceed with caution here. This study makes some pretty bold claims based on a very small sample size of 10 individuals. But taken together, the figurines, the pottery, the diet, and the DNA all point to roots in the Aegean world. But of course the origins of the Philistines are more complicated than a simple narrative of a one-way migration to Canaan. Archaeologists over the past decade argue that the Philistines were not a single ethnicity that invaded, destroyed, and replaced the Canaanites. Rather, as the archaeologist Aaron Mayer argues, they appear to have been a multicultural people comprised of various groups deriving from the eastern and central Mediterranean that joined with local Canaanites to form a unique culture. He argues it is better to describe the Philistines as an entangled society. A society with Aegean roots, but entangled in Canaanite culture. Okay, so that's the archaeological data, but let's now return to the Bible.